Welcome back to the show, folks. I'm Jonathan Phoenix, the Carolina Storyteller, and this is Let Me Tell You a Story. As you know, when I have guests, I try to pick out a story for them. And so I have a lot of stories that I've got reserved for specific people. I don't want to say what stories for who, but sometimes the guest that I have picked out for a story falls through for whatever reason. And I got to make a decision. Do I make you wait on this really good story? Or do I just pick something else for that guest later on if they decide that, they can do it at another time, and I go ahead and tell you the story? And this time I'm telling you the story. See, it's a story about a car. And I have stories about a car. We've already talked about Storm, but this car was really special. Belonged to somebody really famous. And this story takes place in the 1950s. And just to give you an idea, involves someone from a movie you might have heard of called Rebel Without a Cause. Yes, we're talking about James Dean's famous car that led to his tragic death, the one and only Little Bastard. Sit back and let me tell you the story. James Dean was only 24 years old on September 30th, 1955, the fateful day where he died in a terrible auto accident. He had entered into the film industry in 1950 and in a short 5-year period had become the heartthrob of the silver screen, starring in movies like East of Eden, Rebel Without a Cause, and Giant. In 1957, he posthumously received his second Academy Award, two-time Academy Award winner. But Dean wasn't just an actor. He also loved auto racing. He had his first auto race in March of 1955, where he came in first in the novice series and second in the main race, driving a Porsche 365. In May, he traded in that Porsche to get a Porsche Spyder 550. He named the car Little Bastard. It would be this car, would be the last vehicle James Dean ever drove. On the morning of September 30th, Dean, his mechanic, a photographer from Collier magazine, and his friend were loading up to go to Salinas, California for a race that was going to take place on October 1st and 2nd. Now, Dean's mechanic suggested that on the way down to the race, Dean drive the Spyder 550 in order to warm the engine up. They were pulled over at around 3:55 in the afternoon for going speeds in excess of 85 miles an hour. Now, it was just a short while later that a college student traveling in the opposite direction made a right turn onto US 41 while they were traveling on Highway 466. Dean was unable to stop. He and his mechanic slammed into the side of the student's car. The mechanic was ejected from the vehicle, and Dean was still inside when the vehicle skidded onto its side and then rolled over. He received multiple fatal injuries. And while it is unsure if he was dead instantly or if he survived for a short while, when he arrived at the hospital, he was pronounced dead. The news traveled fast, and by October 2nd, the world was mourning the loss of James Dean. But the curse of Little Bastard wasn't over just yet. After Dean's death, ownership of the Porsche 550 Spyder went to his friend, Mr. Hickman. Now, if you know anything about these older cars, you know that sometimes parts for them are very hard to come by. And a wrecked and totaled car is pretty much not worth anything. So, at first, he did sell some parts from the car. Now, for whatever reason, parts bought from Little Bastard, the cars that they went in, suffered horrible accidents. But the connection wasn't made until the car was given to a man who wanted to use the car itself as a symbol to show what can happen when you're not safe on California's roads. He had displayed it in Hollywood, and on the first day it was displayed, Little Bastard slipped from its rigging and shattered the hip of a man standing nearby. And this was actually the second accident related to Little Bastard. More would follow. Little Bastard changed hands several times, and there were always accidents and injuries related to it that were seemingly unexplained. Parts that were sold from Little Bastard and put into cars would mysteriously go out, causing the cars to have horrible wrecks, resulting in numerous deaths. Eventually, though, Little Bastard just disappeared. And that's where the rumors started. After Little Bastard disappeared, rumors and stories started to spread like wildfire. A man in Florida claimed that his car was Little Bastard, and he had purchased it from a man who claimed to have restored it to its mint condition. However, upon examination, they found out it wasn't even a 550 Spider, but a similar looking vehicle. Another man in New York claimed that he had restored Little Bastard after coming across it. But once again, an examination of the car found that while it was a Porsche 550 Spider, it was in fact not Little Bastard, only a vehicle that had been painted much later to look like the original car. Finally, there was a man in Chicago who had claimed that he had the car, sent a picture to Hollywood to show that he had it. But before it could be confirmed, the garage that the car was in mysteriously burned to the ground. And not even the car was left behind, it just mysteriously disappeared. That wasn't the last sighting of Little Bastard, but it's the closest to a confirmed sighting. Still, people who say they have gotten Little Bastard have mysterious accidents. Mysterious deaths surround the legend of the traveling car that's now gone all across the country. Now, maybe it's all coincidence. Or maybe, just maybe, there's a cursed car traveling around, killing people. The tragic death of James Dean should not be belittled by the fact that his car did have very mysterious happenings following behind it. But it does make you think. From the moment the car caused that wreck, it brought nothing but sorrow and pain to everyone that came in contact with it. But still, the man who drove the car its final time should probably be remembered for the work that he did on the screen. But let's remember the car for the work that it did, causing screams. That's going to be this week's story, folks, and I really hope that you enjoyed it. I'm sorry that I didn't get to have this episode with the guests that I wanted to have, but that's okay because there are so many stories of haunted cars and ghost cars, and this person is a big car person, so I'm not going to drop their name, but if I get them on here, don't worry, we're going to have a ghost story for them. But still, this is one I wanted to share with you because with it being right before Halloween and with it happening on September 30th, and when this episode hits, it's going to be September 30th. It was the perfect day to tell the story of Little Bastard. And while some of you may say, well, it's a bunch of coincidences and hokey, there's no such thing as a cursed car, might I remind you that I was once in a car that cranked itself off and took off to get me away from something that was really scary and terrifying. So, 6 of one, half a dozen of the other. I hope you guys enjoyed the story, and I hope I get to see you next week. If you get a chance, go over to thecarolinastoryteller.com, check out our store, be sure to leave a review, and listen to some of our other episodes. You can also get bios on all of our guests. So please, stop by, and remember, stay spooky, my friends. See you next week.